For the chapter review, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through the problems on your study guide so that you can see step by step how to do them. So in section 9.3, you are multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So what you have here on this first one is you have a power of 3 that is extended to each of the items inside that parenthesis. So negative 3 to the third power is negative 27. X squared to the third power, you remember you multiply the exponent, so that's going to give you x to the 6th. You have an understood 1 right here on the y, so it's 1 times 3, or y to the third. And it's over top of still 9x squared y squared. So I look at the coefficients, or the negative 27 over 9, and that reduces to negative 3 over 1, because 9 goes into 27 and 9 goes into 3. So I have a negative 3 on the top. I have a positive 1 on the bottom, which I don't have to put. I have an x to the 6th and an x to the 2nd. So I subtract the exponents because it's dividing with the base number being the same. And I get x to the 4th, and I place it where the larger exponent is. So it goes on the top. I have x to the third over, y to the third over y to the second. So I have y to the first. It's all over top of 1, so I can just put it as negative 3x to the 4th y. And so that's going to be your simplified version of that. This one is a division. So remember, with division, you have to keep the first fraction the way it is, change the division to multiplication, and flip the second. So y squared over x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 2 over y. Now remember, this whole thing has to go away. Once everything's multiplied, to get rid of something on the top and the bottom, you have to get rid of the entire parenthesis. You cannot separate something from an item that is either added or subtracted. But the whole thing goes away. I have a y squared over a y, which just leaves me y to the first power. Now, on something like this, it's division, but you have all this addition and subtraction in between. So the very first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to factor, because you cannot reduce out anything. Like I can't separate the x squared from the 3 or the minus 3. So the very first thing I do is I factor where I can factor. So I have x squared minus 1, which I'm going to be able to take that more. And then I can put 2 sets of parentheses here. I have a 2x and an x. And I'm going to have a 3 and a 2 right here. And they would have to both be positive. I'm going to change this to multiplication, and I'm going to flip this and factor it at the same time. So I'm going to factor out a 4, so I have x plus 3. And then on the bottom, I'm going to factor out a 5 first, which leaves me with x squared minus 2x plus 1. Now, I can factor this one and this one more. So this is the difference of squares. So I have x plus 1 and x minus 1. On the bottom, I still I can factor out a 2 here. So I have a 2 and I have an x plus 1. And I have an x plus 3 because I pulled the 2 out of that one. And I have my same thing on the top. But then this bottom one, I can factor more. And I have an x minus 1 and an x minus 1. Now everything is multiplied together, so I can mark out, if I have on the top and the bottom, if I can mark out the whole set of parentheses. So this and this go away, that and that go away, that and that go away. I've got a 4 and a 2, so that leaves me a 2 on the top. So I have a 6 on the top, and I have a 5 times an x minus 1 on the bottom. And that's as far as you can go. This one, it looks weird because I have a fraction within a fraction. But in actuality, what I have to do, I can go ahead and write it horizontally. Hopefully it'll focus in there. So horizontally, I can just go, this is the same as 6x squared minus 6 over 8y squared plus 8y divided by 3y minus 3 over 4x squared plus 4y. Now I'm going to factor these at the same time I keep, change, flip. I'm going to factor out the 6, so I have y squared minus 1. I'm going to factor out the 8, so 8y, so I have y plus 1. I'm going to change the division to multiplication. I'm going to factor out a 4y, so that gives me a y plus 1 here. I'm going to factor out the 3, so I get a y minus 1. Now, I can still take that more, so I'm going to. So that's going to be the difference of squares, so that's y plus 1 times y minus 1. The bottom is the same. And this side is the same. Okay, I'm going to mark out. That's going to give me a 2. Now I have a 2 times 3 on the bottom, which is 6, which we'll mark out with the 6 on the top. And I'm left with just y plus 1. Then section 9.4, you are adding and subtracting rational expressions. So you have to find a common denominator on these. So if you look on this one, the denominator has to be x plus 2. So I'm going to rewrite this down here with x plus 2 on the bottom. So I have to multiply this one, top and bottom, by x plus 2, because that was what would give me the same denominator on the bottom. I do distributive property, so I have 5x plus 10 plus x minus 3, which when I combine like terms, I'm going to get a 6x plus 7 over x plus 2. And there's nothing else I can do, because remember, you can't separate the terms and factor and reduce them. So that x can't be separated from the 2. I would have to be able to cross out the whole x plus 2. Alright, this one I'm going to factor first so that I can see what they have in common. So then I have an m plus 2 and an m minus 2 plus over here. I'm going to factor out a 3 on the bottom. So if you look and see what they have in common, they have an m plus 2 in common. So that's going to come down here as part of the common denominator. And then I'll kind of mark that out so I know that that's what they had in common. But then my denominator has to be made up of not only that, but everything else I have left up here. So I need a 3 and I need an m minus 2. And then I look over here and I say, what is this denominator missing from the common denominator? It's missing a 3. So I multiply the top and the bottom by 3, which gives me a 3m right there. This one is missing an m minus 2. I have to do distributive property, so that's going to give me a 2m minus 4. So when I combine like terms, I have a 5m minus 4 over a 3 times m plus 2 times m minus 2. Okay. This one is written almost as a fraction within a fraction. So I'm going to have to address the top first, and then I'll address the bottom. If you want to go ahead and write it horizontally, you can do that. So I need a common denominator there, which is going to be AB. So this one is missing the B, and this one is missing the A. So I get a B plus A, still divided by common denominator there is also AB. So this one is missing the B. This one is missing the A. So I get a B minus A. Then I'm going to keep, change, flip. So I have B plus A over AB times AB over B minus A. Those two are the same. And I'm left with B plus A over B minus A. Again, you cannot simplify this because you have something added and something subtracted. So the whole thing has to go for you to get rid of it. So that's as far as you can go right there. All right, the last section was solving rational expressions, and what happens here is you have numbers on both sides, and there's several different ways you can do it. You can do a common denominator all the way across. You can do a common denominator on the left side and then reduce down. So I think that's what I'm going to do here, but it can be done either way. So the common denominator on the left side is 6. So what I'm going to have to do is multiply the top and the bottom there by 2. So I get a 4y. Now, don't forget, if you've got a minus between them, you've got to distribute that minus all the way to both the items in the parentheses. And that's over 6 is equal to 2. So I have a 3y minus 3 over 6 equals 2. I'm going to multiply both sides by 6 here to get rid of it. So I have a 3y minus 3 is equal to 12. I'm going to add a 3 to both sides. So I have 3y equals 15. And I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I get a y equals 5. And if you always go back, make sure that doesn't make that undefined. And when you plug it back in, you'll see that that will work. Okay, here's another one, a little bit more complicated because I've got to factor first. This might be one that I want to have a common denominator all the way across. So let's work on what the common denominator would be. I'm going to factor to m plus 1 times m minus 1 plus 2m minus 5 over m minus 1 is equal to 2m plus 5 over m plus 1. Now you can notice by looking at it that the common denominator is going to be that. That's going to be a combination of everything you have. So on the left hand side, what I'm missing here is an m plus 1. So I do that to the top and bottom. Obviously that one's not missing anything. And what I'm missing over here is an m minus 1. So I have, over here, I have an m plus 1 times an m minus 1. And I can put the 10 here. Then this is going to be FOIL. So that's going to be a 2m squared plus a 2m minus a 5m minus a 5. Okay, this is first, outside, inside, last. On this side, I will also have to do FOIL. So I have a 2m squared minus a 2m plus a 5m minus a 5. And that's going to be over top of m plus 1 times m minus 1. So I'm going to combine like terms. Here on the top, I have a 2m squared minus a 3m. And that's going to give me a plus 5 when I combine the 10 and the negative 5. And it's over top of m plus 1, m minus 1. Here, I'm going to have a 2m squared plus 3m minus 5 over m plus 1 and m minus 1. Now, notice I can multiply both sides by the m plus 1 and the m minus 1. And it's going to get rid of them on both sides. And I'm going to be left with 2m squared minus 3m plus 5 equals 2m squared plus 3m minus 5. So I want to take everything with an m to the left-hand side, so I'm going to add a negative 2m squared. So that's going to cancel out on both sides, so I'm left with a 3m, negative 3m, plus 5 equals 3m minus 5. I'm going to subtract a 3m from both sides. So I'm going to get a negative 6m plus 5, cancels out there, equals negative 5. So I'm going to subtract a negative 5 from both sides. So I have a negative 6m is equal to a negative 10. And then I'm going to divide by a negative 6. And I'm going to get m is equal to, reduced down, is going to be 5 over 3. Okay? And that's what I would plug back in to make sure that it would work. All right. Last one is an inequality one. Now, in the inequality, remember, you always have to look first to see what would make this undefined. So one of my vital spots here is a b equals 6, because if that was a 6, this would be undefined. So once I find those vital spots, then I begin to solve this problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a common denominator on both sides. So the common denominator here would have to also be b minus 6. So I have 6 over b minus 6 is less than, and I can do distributive property on the top, so it's going to be 24b minus, and then let's see, whatever 24 times 6 is. It's going to give me 144 over b minus 6. I can multiply both sides by b minus 6. So it marks out there, and there. So I get 6 is less than 24b minus 144. I can add the 144 to both sides, which is going to give me a 150 is less than 24b. And when I divide by the 24, going to give me a decimal value, which I can go back and convert. So it's going to give me a 25 over 4 is less than the b. Okay, so I have crucial spots here. I have a 6 and I have a 25 over 4. So I'm going to test to the right, to the middle, to the left. If you will, 25 over 4 is the same as 6.25. So what I need to do is I need to check if something's greater than that or if something's less than that. And what you might want to do is you might want to bring everything to one side so that you would have, if you came up here, because it'll make it easier to test, because you can just test whether it's positive or negative. So if I come over here and I change this to 6 over b minus 6, and then I subtract this side from it, so I'm going to have a negative 24b, and it will end up being plus 144, because you're going to distribute your subtraction, over b minus 6 is less than 0. Of course, I could multiply and get rid of that. So I'm going to have, I'm going to subtract that. So that might actually change that. Hold on one second. Okay, so here I'm going to actually have, if I brought that over, let's let's do that a different way and see what happens here. Okay, I don't think I explained that real good. So let me start from this top here. I've got a 6 over b minus 6. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract the 24 over 1 is less than 0. So then the common denominator again is b minus 6 and b minus 6. So I've got a 6 minus 24b plus 144. And that is going to make a difference here. B minus 6 is less than 0. If I multiply that, I'm going to get a 6 minus 24b. Yeah. Well, let's combine the 6 and the... I'm going to actually add those two. So that's going to give me a 150 minus 24b. It actually comes out the same way, but it's just a different way of doing it. I can multiply both sides by the b minus 6 and then solve, and then I'm back over here as well. But what I want to do is I want to look up here to this particular problem, okay? Because that's going to make it easier to plug in. So if I put like a 7 here, and I go 7 minus 1, or 7 minus 6 is 1, so that's going to give me a 6 minus 24, which is going to give me a negative number, which means that works. Okay, because I get a negative is less than 0, which is correct. If I did a 6.1, that's going to give me a 0.1. So 6.1, actually it'd have to be something different than that. Let's do a 6.5. If I did a 6.5, which is between those two, I would have a 6 divided by 0.5, which is going to give me a 12. A 12 minus 24 is also a negative number, so that also works. If I do the other side, let's say I do a 0, okay, because that would be the other side of this, I would have a 6 divided by a negative 6, which is going to give me a negative 1 minus the 24, which is still going to give me a negative number. So I look at that. Okay, something happened somewhere in my... I think I must have divided wrong. Or I wrote the problem down wrong. Let me look real quick. I did. I wrote the problem different than what you have on the study guide. This would have been an 8 right here, which then does change it. But the way that this problem runs is even less than this is also going to give you that value. So for this one, it would be all real numbers. Now, you'll notice on your study guide that you have an 8 as an answer. And what works on your study guide is when you plug it back in, you get a true, which is less than 8. You get a false that is greater than 8 and less than 8.2. And you get a true that's greater than 8.25. So you have two areas that work, but I wrote the problem different than what you had on your study guide. So that's why it was a little different than that. All right, so your homework is on page 587 through 588, 20 through 40 all.